So, what would you say to people who are doubting themselves because of their race or their color in terms of being successful?
I think I've read some fascinating research about this. It really changed my mindset. If you look at today's organizations, how they were set up, many of them were set up, say, 100 years ago. And then at the time, there was an ideal worker archetype in mind. So most of the time, that is a white man. It's not just a white man, it's a white middle-class man that is also straight.
Right.
But if you think about how they manifest in terms of their communication styles, that often means they will communicate in an aggressive, exclusive way to present power. And then they're most likely to not have any carers responsibilities, be it their children or their elderly relatives. So in other words, they're most likely to think the job as their number one priority and then make that as the entirety of their life. So that's what today's organizations were set up. And then now everybody walks in, and then if you fit with that archetype, then the reality is it's easier for you to access opportunities, easier for you to find mentors, easier for you to find a sense of belonging.
Wow.
Whereas for whatever reasons that you don't fit into that, then it's harder for you, all the reverse is true. So I think, a lot of the times that we have seen the advice was given to fix individuals, right? If you're not confident enough, be confident. But how about the default communication style? That why do we have to be all aggressive in the first place, right? And you will have to make your life or work fit together. Why they are in conflict in the first place? So I think in addition to kind of work on ourselves, I'm not saying that we shouldn't, that we all have a lot of improvement to do individually. At the same time, I do wonder if we can direct some of the energy to look at how these systems were set up in the first place and how we can actually, initiate, empower people to drive some changes. And then so instead of saying, whatever makes me different is making me feel, lack of belonging, perhaps we can start to cultivate that sense of belonging. You're not a problem. I think that is, my fundamental mindset that I've kind of came to, but it's a journey. I've spent years thinking I'm the problem.
Wow. So let me dig a bit deeper. So how did you manage that? So because yes, you're successful, you're smart, but then how do you manage internally walking around with that in your head? Did that stop you from becoming a bit more, stepping out at work or being braver or speaking up? Did that stop that for you?
Yeah, I think partially it comes to having this knowledge of what is going on. And then, because I did psychology or behavioral science, so I think that was really very interesting for me to examine this. So for example, I certainly had the experience of being told to speak up, and then I don't think I'm alone in that. There are various reasons that people think that you need to speak up more. But for me, that was a really weird moment because I was like, I was very junior. I was paying you respect. What do you mean I need to speak up? And then I realized, this comes down to a lot of the beliefs. So for example, in a lot of the Western corporates, we talk about this default. For the American ones especially, they believe this squeaky wheels get the grease. Whereas, we were brought up to believe the loudest dog gets shot. So you can imagine, we don't want to get shot.
Yeah, that's
so
right.
there is no way we're going to speak up.
Wow.
So I think for a long time, I thought, wow, I'm not, whatever the reasons I might be. But now I realize, when I don't speak up, the reasons were that I was waiting for my turns because we don't interrupt each other, or I was preparing for my comments because we only speak up when the answers were almost perfect, right? We are not raised to just throw in comments, half-baked comments like a lot of people from other cultures do. And then also, yeah, as I mentioned, I was paying my respect. But I think that was the fundamental step one in terms of understanding why I didn't do it.
Right.
But the other side was how that was perceived by others. There were three things going through my colleagues' minds that I didn't know, because they would think I'm not confident, I have no communication skills, or I have no views. And all of them are very damaging, really, for the organizations that we work. So I think having that knowledge of what impact my behavior and then their perceptions can be really liberating to see I'm not a problem. You know, my behavior was because of these reasons, and now I can define my own styles. And I think if you think about the future of leadership, it was no longer that default style
Yeah, that's
that
right.
we meant, right? It was much more nuanced, much more inclusive. And then fundamentally, I think that leads to people adapt their styles in different situations anyway, in which case it can be very empowering because you are already adapting in the situations already.
Excellent. I like that. That's really interesting. Here's a question. I'm interested to hear the answer, so this is going to be fun. So, how did rejection make you who you are today?
Oh, you know, the research or the study from the psychology obviously tells us that is just as painful as any physical harm, because rejection means, evolutionary speaking, that we were not part of our tribe. It's life and death, effectively. So we're hardwired to react to that. I think my sense on that was that it doesn't even need to be like somebody tells you no. It could just be small moments in life. So, for example, I remember, those Friday night drinks, for example, that in the UK, that should really be part of the English education in China, by the way. But we show up and then we were like, whoa, it was a very noisy environment. And then you didn't really understand what they were saying. And there was no food. I kept asking, where's food coming? There was
Oh, yeah, so this is before gastropubs.
Well, yeah, precisely.
Right,
These are
right.
just like, Friday in the center of the city, and then those drinks. and then I think that was supposed to be a team bonding experience, but it really gave me a sense of, feeling of isolation, because I felt like I wanted to be part of the team, but I couldn't. I didn't understand what they were saying. I was hungry, I was cold, and I was tired. And so that lack of belonging didn't even need to happen when somebody tells you no. It could just happen as a very benign moment that people think this is a good thing. What is wrong with her? But then later on, I realized, there are lots of people who don't go to Friday night drinks. It could be that you're a parent. It could be you have a long commute. It could be religious reasons. It could be you're a recovering alcoholic, whatever that might be. So some of those very simple activity we take it for granted that give people a subtle advantages that can naturally participate, and then really disadvantage people that cannot naturally participate. So I think those rejection moments, that gave me a sense of opportunity to really look at what was happening. And then I think that, they say this pain plus reflection means growth. So I think a lot of my thinking now probably all goes back to those little moments of rejection every time I didn't know what a cricket, a rugby, or, rounders, they all adds up. And then that gives me more insights in terms of what it's like to be a minority. And then ultimately that will make us much more of an inclusive leader in a way. It's an enriching experience from that point of view.
That's true, because I just realized you come from a country where you are the majority, and then you come to where you are a minority. And
I
like
would
you
have
said,
never had that experience
and like you
otherwise.
said, when you get educated, you only learn the language, you don't learn the culture. Right, got it. Interesting. So talking about careers, why do you think a lot of people do not get promoted even when they put all of the effort in at work?
I can share some of the perspectives I have, in the sense that maybe there is this perception that efforts equal success. And then coming from, China, for example, that was definitely what we were told. So especially if you think about we're all good students, and then as long as you deliver good exam results, then that surely means promotion should happen. And I think that was perhaps one of the biggest mistakes I have made, in terms of not seeing, when you come to the workplace, this is no longer an exam. The rules of work is not written on the wall that you can study. and then there is no right or wrong answer in a lot of the places. So I think that, really asks for a very different mindset, that, having the effort was almost a given. That's what you need, but there are so much more that you need to navigate to be successful at work. And then I think people say this is soft skills, but there's nothing soft about it. I think it's actually extremely misleading. There are the human skills, but there are actually even more important, especially as you kind of get senior. Most of the work that you do is about people. I think it's Simon Sinek who said, 100% customers are people, 100% colleagues are people. Ultimately, it is the people that constitutes the business. So if anything, we should make a commitment to understand people. That's what we can be successful, as opposed to just thinking efforts leads to, success or whatever outcome there might be.
So if we put effort aside then, so if I want to get promoted at work today, give me 3 things, just 3 points of what I should be doing.
Wow, I think firstly is, this is probably a main theme in terms of what I mentioned earlier, is to make a commitment to understand yourself. But that means externally, that means how you are perceived. So in any interaction that you wanted to go in, where are they, where you are? And then also, do you have the ability to kind of direct that conversation, in between, for example, when things don't go the way that you want to. But also the internal kind of awareness, which is what makes you you. Does that define you, or actually you can craft your own way? So I would say the commitment to that, understanding the self-knowledge, or understanding how our minds work, they're the same thing, I think, because we had, PE, for example, in school, not in China, obviously. We did have it, but it was all theoretical. But it's like, how do our minds work? That's fundamentally what you want to engage with your best cognitive abilities the whole time. But a lot of the situations that we go in, that is being taken offline. And then, to give you an example, the second point, in addition to understanding self, is a very powerful thing, is really to close this intent and impact gap. Because how often we want to say, we want to do something, we want to, access more. But to me, that is not different to we want to be more diverse at work. Because fundamentally, you're asking people to change, to react, to think, to behave differently. That is where behavior science can come in. That's what we can make those changes happen. So I think to understand that to close this impact and the intent gap would be super important. That's going to be so helpful for you to
get promoted.
Precisely.
And the funny thing is, you're the first person that's actually answered this in that particular way, because most people talk about having a sponsor,
of course,
having a coach, mentor. They talk about
do all of the above, absolutely.
But then you're talking completely different, which is actually, it's all about you. You need to kind of understand who you are, what you bring to the table, and address how you respond to different people and how they respond to you, and figure out yourself, which is just brilliant. Love it. Cool.